I'm Judy Jordan. I'm a professor at Southern Illinois University Carbondale and a writer. This is my Pugged Poetry channel, and what I'm hoping to do here is mostly teach about the craft of writing. I am not one of those persons who believe that great writers are born. I believe great writers can be taught, as long as one has basic intelligence. If one is willing to read and to actually practice writing, and one has teachers willing to tell them the craft of how to write, I believe that we can all be great writers, and I'm hoping to help some of you do that. This poetry channel is also a resource for my students at Southern Illinois University Carbondale. I teach undergraduate class of 119, which is an introduction to poetry and fiction, and I also teach the undergraduate classes of introduction and intermediate and advanced poetry, and I teach the graduate workshop and the graduate forms class. So the lectures will be varied in their skill level, from the 119 level all the way up to the graduate level. And some of it will be blazingly obvious to some of you, but the lectures are meant for people at various levels. I also will be filming some of my classes. I think I have some great classes, and I'd love to film some of them as I'm teaching, and I'm hoping that this will help some of you in just learning how to write, whether you're just now approaching writing or are coming to it from a more advanced state. There will also be some video of people reading. We have two literary festivals here at the Southern Illinois University Carbondale. We have one coming up in just a couple of weeks called the Devil's Kitchen. It's named after a local lake. And then we have one in the spring called Little Grassy, which is also named after a local lake. And we bring in some really astounding writers, and I'm hoping to film some of them reading their poems and maybe answering questions and putting that on here. I also hope to introduce you to my pugs and my other dogs. That you hear barking is Barkangelo. I've only had him for 2 weeks. He was just given to me from someone who couldn't keep him. And he's a wonderful bowling ball of stubbornness and love, but he does like to bark, Barkangelo. I will be doing some reviews of books. I will be doing some poetry analysis, but the analysis of poems is more focused on the craft of the poem. I rarely teach analysis of poetry, except as how it goes to craft, because I believe as writers, we are writing, we are not analyzing. And I believe it was Robert Frost that said symbols fly out from everywhere, so you can certainly find symbols in any writing, but I believe as writers, we first must write a poem that is full of craft. Barbara Begg, I believe, calls it content versus craft issues. And that is indeed what I believe. You have the content of the story, and then you have the music of the line, the music of the word choices, the syntax. And that is what I'm hoping to teach. I will certainly be analyzing some poems, because I think that's just what we have been taught to do all our lives. But I'm hoping that in teaching the basic craft and the openness of analysis and the complete unnecessariness, I don't think that's a word, but unnecessariness of analysis, that I can perhaps make people a little less frightened of poetry. Just to give you a quick story, I live in a very rural area in Southern Illinois, and I cringe when people ask me what I do for a living, because, you know, I have to admit that I'm a professor, and that always puts people a little bit on edge. And then they ask me what I teach, and if I say English, they are very on edge. They have nightmares left over from in high school diagramming sentences or having to figure out grammar rules, very difficult grammar rules, some of which I'm still a little unsure on. And if I say poetry, then they really sometimes just act in fear, and will, I mean, I've had people just say, okay, we're not going to talk anymore. We're going to go talk about something else. And I would like to say some poems are difficult, even for me, someone who's been studying poetry all of my life. But a lot of poems, I think, can be read and enjoyed by everyone. The very first poem that we're going to talk about is Oranges by Gary Soto. And this is a poem that works on the surface. It's a beautiful poem that is a wonderful, positive story about a 12-year-old boy going on his first date. And that's all the poem has to be. Just read it and love it. William Carlos Williams says, if it ain't a pleasure, it ain't a poem. So it is indeed a pleasure. And then if you want to go on and analyze the poem further, you can, but you don't have to. I would like to talk about the joy and pleasure of poetry, and perhaps make it a little less frightening for people. But again, I just want to mention again that this channel is a resource for my students, and many of my undergraduates do not want to be poets. Many of them are taking the poetry classes because it's required as a creative writing major or minor, but they all want to go on to MFAs in fiction. Now, I have a Master of Fine Arts in poetry from the University of Virginia. I also have a Master of Fine Arts in fiction from the University of Utah, and I believe there's much in both genres that cross. I also know for a fact that my fiction improved drastically in the 2 years that I was at University of Virginia writing nothing but poetry. If you're a great writer in fiction, you can be a great writer in poetry. If you're a great writer in poetry, you can be a great writer in fiction. There's much that happens in both genres. I also sometimes teach a nonfiction class, and I have students who are in journalism and students who are in the playwriting department or the film department, and some of them are even in advertising department. So I will talk about how some things in the craft of poetry also crosses over to the craft of fiction or nonfiction or journalism or playwriting or film or even advertising. And my dog is quieted down now. That's nice. If you were closer, I'd pick him up and show him to you, but I'll show him to you later. That's all for now. I really appreciate you watching. If you have anything that you'd like for me to go over, mention it in the comments, and I'll see if I can get to it. I'll try to address any craft issues or questions that you might have. And I hope this is a great poetry channel, and all of us, learn much. Thank you.